Welcome to the Digital Savage, me, Jon Savage. This is a bit of a different episode this week. I just did an interview on Channel Africa on FM radio, and the topic that they wanted to bring up was, is podcasting the death knell for traditional radio? And so I just thought the conversation was interesting, and so I thought I would make it an episode of the podcast. If you're getting any value out of this podcast, do me a favor, either subscribe or leave me a comment, or even both. That would be great. Here's my interview with Samora on Channel Africa.
Black coffee bringing us to 15 minutes after 3 Central African time. And we are going to go into that conversation about podcasting and it potentially going to lead to the extinction of traditional broadcast.
Okay. I think it's a fear that a lot of people have, and we are going to be talking to Jon Savage, radio and broadcasting legend, of course. You know that he has some interest in music, but also is the co-founder of AMP Studios in Newtown, and he is on the line to chat to us a little bit about what we can expect when it comes to podcasting, and also just a what do we call it? What do they call it?
What do they call what?
The meetup that is happening next week to discuss the future of podcasting.
I don't know. Is there a name?
I don't want to call it a conference. I don't want to call it a convention.
Let's call it a conference. Let's call it a conference. So we are joined on the line by Jon Savage, who's a podcaster and co-founder of African Podcast Network. Jon, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, guys. So nice to be on your show.
Thank you for making time to chat to us. Listen, I was saying to Samora earlier that I remember a time when Twitter, when it was still called Twitter, had spaces, and the newsroom was abuzz with just talks and rumors, fears about, oh my goodness, these spaces and lives. And just because we had just come out of COVID, lives were the thing, and people had completely disengaged from traditional media because they were no longer in their
Do you remember Clubhouse
cars.
before that?
Which one?
Clubhouse. Remember Clubhouse?
No, that went completely over my head. I don't even remember about Clubhouse.
Twitter stole Clubhouse and turned it into Spaces, but for a minute, Clubhouse took over the whole world with this live streaming stuff.
Well, let's talk about it. It seems fad-ish to me. Maybe it's not, because, we are seeing more and more people take these platforms up. But what do they mean? Where are we moving to?
So, well, firstly, great to be chatting to you, and this is a topic I absolutely love. I think just to clear up the fear part of it, I think it's, the shift that is happening, it's not a threat to radio. I think they are two different media. And this is something I've always, I loved radio and I love podcasting. I love them both, but they actually serve very different purposes. And you will never get, what you get from radio, you don't get from podcasting. What you get from podcasting, you don't get from radio. But there's a lot of crossover, and I think that's what causes the fear. And radio has to get better at doing what they do best, and podcasting has to get better at doing what they do best. And I don't think any of them are. I don't think radio is any danger of being extinct, but we have to kind of, the whole digital ecosystem has changed dramatically globally. And I think it's just sort of really adapting into that environment is the way I see it working.
All right, so Jon, I really want to know about just your journey coming from a traditional broadcasting background and deciding that you are going to now be a podcaster. First of all, what kind of fueled that decision, and also how did your colleagues take it when you decided to step in this direction?
Well, I wasn't a natural. I mean, to be fair, I started podcasting in 2009. I started a podcast called the Official South African Music Industry Podcast. I was so into podcasting super early. And I think I was on radio around the same time as well. And again, I didn't see them as any threat to each other. But I definitely have felt, and I guess this is the change, or what is so different about the digital media space, is the lack of gatekeepers. And I realized, I loved radio and I was doing what I was doing on radio, but there was stuff I couldn't do, or stuff that my station manager didn't want me to do, or stuff that I thought, I was really passionate about, but didn't align with the direction of the station. So I did my own stuff, and that stuff also took off. And I think that's, if you look at the path of podcasters, look at a Mac G type of example, love him or hate him, he started on radio and could not, it was too confined for what he was trying to do. He had to go and do it on an independent platform, build the platform from nothing, but the audience was his gatekeeper, not some person who's sitting upstairs and telling you what to do, not some advertiser who's sort of putting you in a box. It was the audience that has driven his direction. And I think that's the compelling part about it, is that where radio and traditional media is really about reach, in the sense that you're trying to please as many people as possible and grow your audience as wide as possible. The podcasting space is kind of, it's narrower and deeper, where you're trying to have a real relationship with somebody, and it's you yourself having that relationship, not 15 other sort of DJs, and it's about a particular niche that you're passionate about. This is a really weird example, and I don't know why I'm bringing it up, but one of the biggest podcasts in the world is called My Dad Wrote a Porno. I mean, this is like a $1 billion business.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And how they started was, these guys just thought, they found this erotic novel that their dad had written when he was 17.
Okay.
And they thought it'd be hilarious to just read pages out. There wasn't, and people just gravitated towards it, and this has become a massive shift. And I think that is because there wasn't a gatekeeper saying, well, that's not going to work, or that's too on the edge for me, or I don't think my brand is going to like it. And now they've made that into a commercial empire.
John, I look at it and I say some of the things that really, really entice me about podcasting are very different to other people. And I would like for us to jump into that in just a bit. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back continuing this conversation with Jon Savage.
Hooking you up with today's news from the African perspective.
23 minutes after 3 Central African time. We're still in conversation with Jon Savage, who's a podcaster and a co-founder of African Podcasts Network. John, you mentioned something quite important about gatekeeping, and I think it's got, a tricky perspective depending on where you're sitting, because while it is fantastic for people to be able to have the freedom to talk about, to discuss any topics, and not thinking about the barriers of an organization, what that has also done is that there is a plethora of people, one would argue qualified and not, who do take up these opportunities. And as a result, there's a lot for consumers to rummage through before they find those worthwhile platforms or podcasts, where they can actually invest their time. What's your take on that one?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, yeah. There's too much junk. There's no doubt about it. There's too much nonsense out there.
Oh, thanks for freeing me. I just couldn't say it like that.
Look. Okay. So there's a lot happening at the moment. I've spent a lot of this year speaking at all the international conferences, really meeting the CEOs of the large podcasting networks, the Amazons, and really there is a big shift happening in the podcasting space, in inverted commas.
Okay.
And it's largely, what I'm getting more and more passionate about talking about is there are huge opportunities for us in Africa. There's so much sort of pioneering stuff happening here. And one of those things is that, yes, I think even a year ago, anyone could start a podcast. You could be in the garage with your uncle talking about, butterflies, whatever. Mm-hmm. Everyone was doing that. But the whole industry is evolving quite dramatically, mainly driven by YouTube. Africa is so sort of YouTube centric. And in the rest of the world, podcasts started as audio and are moving into the video world. We actually started in video in Africa. We got YouTube long before Spotify came, very late. And so we kind of have this video-centric look at podcasting. And with that, what is happening is people are starting to have to think a lot longer and harder because there's so much more competition about their podcasts, and they're almost becoming shows. You like really need a good show format. You need a good anchor. You need proper guests. You can't just interview celebrities anymore. There's been global surveys to say that hearing from your celebrity is the least most important thing to a podcast listener. That part is done. So what that means is there's a lot of space for innovation, and it's starting to happen slowly, that you really have to think carefully in the same way, interestingly, that you might go to the radio stations as a station manager and pitch your show to them. You have to kind of put the same amount of thought now into the show you're going to put out in the platforms because of how competitive it is. But what is cool about that is that there's such cool opportunities for new talent to find their way through. But yeah, the bottom line is the audience is more critical and a harder gatekeeper to get past than any single person. But it is a lot more democratic. So if you're putting junk online, it's just going to die. But if you find a way to resonate with your audiences, it's so dealing with podcasters. Sorry to hop on, but dealing with podcasts is a very interesting thing because they are hypersensitive, almost like wind on your skin, to the feeling of their audience. They need their audience to be engaged at all times.
I get you.
And if they lose an audience, they feel it. So they're consistently trying to do the best content at all times, and grow and grow and grow. And I think sometimes in traditional media, that pressure is not always there because you hold the airwaves, right? And that is what is pushing a lot of innovation, is the demand to try and grow your audience.
Jon, when we look at the world of podcasting, and I think one of the things that we had touched on yesterday is how there's a lot of noise. And is there something that, or on the horizon, maybe some kind of regulation? Because the type of information that people now have access to on the internet, anybody with a mic can literally say anything. Are we seeing some kind of regulation coming in the future, near or distant, when it comes to podcasting?
I don't think so. I mean, there's talk of it. I don't think regulation is the answer to anything in this space, really. What is the biggest sort of pain point in this space is discovery. And I think where, the hardest thing now in the environment is to get yourself discovered as a new content creator. And one of the sort of opportunities for innovation in the podcasting space is there are currently very few to little tools in discovery. It's not like social media where you can boost your podcast. It's a long, slow, hard road. You have to build it one listener at a time, and there are no shortcuts. But there aren't a lot of yet discovery platforms. Like all the global research shows that the way people discover podcasts is word of mouth. It's usually somebody recommending a podcast to the other person. And because of that, where there are issues are like, how do you sift through the mess and find the great podcast? So I kind of think that where there is space for innovation and business opportunities in the space is finding ways to curate and a discovery platform for podcasters. Where do you go if you're interested in podcasting? You just like go into the death pit of podcasting hell and sift around, or you phone someone and ask someone. And I think if there's if some technology on the horizon solves that problem, that would be great. That's where I think once you kind of have some trusted people who can recommend podcasters, then I think that'll be a game changer.
Jon, yesterday when you mentioned that podcasters need to produce essentially these platforms, and that the design of South African podcasts is that they are full-on productions in the way of screens as well, right? So you have audio as well as visual. It got me thinking about the skills set that is needed. Are there any training platforms perhaps? And does one need to get professionals behind the scene in order to get your podcast to stand out?
Whew, that's such a tough question. I mean, our studio, so I run a studio in Newtown called Amped Studios. And Amped has been running for 5 years. It is a world-class podcasting facility. It's got four podcasting studios, a recording studio. It's got a live room. It's got a YouTubing space. It's got cameras. It's got gear. It's got people, and it's all free. And we built that space specifically as an empowerment space so that we could build a bridge between people who have an idea and don't know how to create content. And that space has become, I mean, we have a community of about 15,000, and we're working with lots of great podcasters from DJ Spoo, Fresh is there, Penwell often records there, a lot of high profile podcasts, as well as a lot of medium podcasts who can't afford their own sort of gear and stuff yet up until they can. And then you've got young podcasters who are coming up who it's like they just want to get into podcasting. And that ecosystem has worked really well. One of the podcasters there, Tato Rampedi, started off, coming through the system at Amped, and has eventually left us and built his own studio, on the money he's been able to make from podcasting. And so Amped is sort of for me, the best place to learn.
It sounds like a multi-tiered system, and as a result, you get, these youngsters that you speak of, like the Tantos, would get mentorship from the ones that are already established, like the Penwells, and I like that. I like it.
So it's free for everybody, and how we make the celebrities pay is that they get access to like world-class gear, but they have to mentor, they have to answer any questions from other people, they have to use some of our interns or new kids. If they're looking for people for their team, they've got to take them from our team. So it's a very nice little system there. And it really is, I think, driving a lot of the sort of growth in podcasting.
Like and also, John, when we look at it in terms of the types of podcasts that we're seeing in South Africa, if you go onto my Spotify, you're probably going to see Murder with My Husband, True Crime South Africa with Nicole Engelbrecht, Unseen. So that is kind of my vibe in terms of podcasting, and which is pretty niche because it's true crime. Are we seeing niche podcasts actually kind of popping up in South Africa, or is it still just a matter of talking heads about pop culture and current affairs?
I love this question. That's my favorite question. What is interesting is that if you look at the high-performing podcasts on Spotify and then look at Apple and then look at YouTube, you'll see there's some overlap. It's three totally different charts. It's very interesting. Obviously, you've got the same sort of top guys, but on the list, it's a variety of things. Yes, true crime, looking at global statistics as well. True crime just kills everywhere. Aha, that's funny. I didn't make that joke on purpose. It just performs well in every region on the planet. It must be something to do with our psyche. So true crime does well. In the rest of the world, there's, one of the things where I wish there were more people, and if you're a podcaster or someone looking to make content, there are verticals in our podcasting space that are doing really well in the rest of the world, and there's just nobody doing it here. So I'll give you some examples. Comedy. Where are our comedy podcasts? Yes, we have one or two. There's not enough, in so many regions, comedy is one of the top performing ones. And we only have a tiny handful of comedy podcasts, and you'll see on our podcast charts that international comedy is being consumed here because there isn't enough local comedy stuff. African language, where are African language podcasts? There's so few. And I've just seen, I'm working with a company in South America where they are doing, what do you call them? Dramas, audio dramas in their own languages. And they're getting like 8 million listens a week.
And this is South America.
South America. So
I guess that makes sense considering, their love for telenovelas and TV.
So we love telenovelas too. Why are we not doing audio novellas in our space, in our own languages? I think there's really big opportunities. Sport was something that there was a lack of. There's starting to be a few great soccer podcasts and rugby podcasts that are coming through, but it's relatively new. And we are stuck in the talking heads interview the celebrity space. There's a lot of wisdom, and great. Mpumi Ledwaba is doing such amazing work. Twins, doing those sorts of things in like wellness. I've just written an article about how strong our female podcasters are. I think
in fact,
that the women
that is so crazy because I was going to ask you about that. I've seen one of your talks where you did mention female podcasters and how well that they are doing, and I wanted to just delve into that. Why is it that they seem to be leading? What kind of trends do you see with them?
So it's hard to diagnose that, but I don't think it's possible that women have not really been able to set the agenda in the mainstream media. And in the podcasting space, it's these powerful women who are coming in and are talking about things that are really meaningful to them that I think might be, not seen as critical in a mainstream environment. And they are showing how important it is to be talking about family matters, personal wealth and health, issues that are affecting women, and not in a way, this is a very interesting nuance, like this edutainment angle. If you're going to go onto radio with a cause, it works because you're speaking to an audience and you can elevate your cause. But in podcasting, you actually have to attract people. You're not talking to anyone. You have to invite them in. So you kind of have to go in with a combination of education and entertainment and like drawing people into the conversation. And I think people like Mpumi, who is, per episode, people don't know this, but per episode,
she grows.
In the audio environment, she's bigger than Mac G.
Oh, really?
It's phenomenal. Yeah. In audio
My
only.
Goodness.
So she really is a phenom, like someone who's doing amazing stuff. And there's a lot of, I think the Sen twins are doing great work. Gigi Lemaine doesn't get enough credit. She's got a very small podcast called POV with Gigi Lemaine, and she's just tackling amazing issues. And I think she should be bigger. I just think women are actually killing it in podcasting. It's so cool.
Jon, let's talk about the gathering that you will be having that is coming up. Give us all the details.
Okay, so it's AMP Studios is our space there. And we actually host masterclasses like this every single week, mostly. We have speed networking sessions. And like I said, it's free for everybody. And I've never given, in all the years, the 5 years that we've had this place, I've actually never given a talk there. And because I've been spending a lot of time looking at the global market and seeing how many opportunities there are for us here. And that we don't see because we kind of have a little glass ceiling a little bit. And I want to really start working closely with podcasters to inspire them to see these opportunities and small, medium businesses. There's so many big global opportunities that are brewing here. And so I wanted to do this podcast to talk about what is the global marketplace? How does Africa fit in? What are those opportunities? What are the upcoming trends? And how can we all work together on actually getting those opportunities into play?
Yeah. All right. Absolutely love it. Where can we find you for more information?
I'm on Instagram a lot. It's at Jon Savage. Largely like podcasting advice stuff, and not like it's not twee stuff like how do you plug in your microphone. It's like really deep stuff. I'm going super deep, ninja deep. Or for this masterclass, you can just go to the AMP Studios Instagram or TikTok, and you can register on the Instagram there for free.
We absolutely love it. Jon, thank you so much for joining us. I personally shall be seeing you next week, Friday. We've given our entire podcasting team, the day off so that we can actually just try and be there and get this wealth of knowledge from you guys. And we wish you all the best. And
hang on. Aren't I going to see you on Monday? Aren't I part of the team now?
We're going to sort out all of your issues with HR, and we'll be here on Monday. Ladies
and gentlemen, appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Jon, thank you so much for your time. That is Jon Savage. If you want to find out more about the AMP Studio, certainly go onto their social media platforms, AMP Studios on Instagram, and do check out that gathering that they'll be having, that masterclass on everything having to do with podcasting. I think it's a brilliant opportunity if you want to enter this market and you want to do something different. You don't want just to rehash what is already out in the market. Jon will certainly give you the tidbits on what is trending. It is 30 minutes after 2 Central Africa.